This is the powerful story of Jordan and her little son Michael, fighting to survive homelessness and find hope in the darkest places. Stay with us to see their journey through struggle, courage, and love. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories like this. The city never really slept, but to Jordan, it felt like it was closing its eyes and turning its back. The cold November wind bit at her face as she held tight to the small hand in hers. Michael, her 3-year-old son, clutched his threadbare blanket, eyes wide and searching for something safe in the shadows of abandoned buildings. They had nowhere to go. For the past 2 weeks, Jordan had avoided the crowded shelters. She'd heard stories of stolen belongings, worse things happening to children, and she refused to risk Michael's safety. Every night was a gamble, every creaking floorboard or distant shout a reminder of how fragile their existence was. Tonight, they found an old, crumbling house just off a forgotten street. The windows were shattered, the door hung on a single rusty hinge, and the walls were stained with graffiti and the scars of time. But it was dry, sheltered from the wind, and most importantly, no one else was there. Jordan pushed the door open with a grunt. The inside smelled of damp wood and rot. Trash littered the floor, broken glass glistened in the faint moonlight, and rats scurried in the corners. She set Michael down gently. "Stay close, baby," she whispered, wrapping her coat tighter around him. Michael's eyes darted around the dark room, his small fingers gripping hers like a lifeline. Jordan found a spot in the far corner where the ceiling didn't leak as badly. She pulled out the thin blanket she'd stolen days ago and laid it on the floor. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. She pulled Michael close and kissed his forehead, her heart pounding. Tomorrow, she promised herself, tomorrow we'll find a way. The city's distant hum seemed to fade as she closed her eyes, trying to block out the emptiness around them. For Michael, she had to be strong, even if inside, she was breaking. The morning light filtered weakly through the broken windows, casting fractured patterns on the dusty floor. Jordan awoke to Michael's soft whimpering. He had curled up close to her during the night, seeking warmth she wasn't sure she could give. She looked around the room again, the peeling wallpaper, cracked plaster, the shattered remnants of what had once been a home. The cold seeped in through every crack, wrapping them in an unrelenting chill. Michael rubbed his eyes and looked up at her. "Mama, cold." Jordan swallowed the lump in her throat and forced a smile. "I know, baby. But I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." She wrapped the thin blanket tighter around him, but it barely helped. There was no heat, no electricity, no running water. The only sound was the occasional drip from the leaky ceiling. She ventured outside to find some water. The neighborhood was silent except for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bark of a stray dog. Everywhere she looked, there were signs of decay, boarded-up storefronts, abandoned cars, broken sidewalks. Jordan knew the world outside wasn't safe, but inside these broken walls, the danger felt no less real. Back inside, she prepared a small meal from the meager supplies she had, a can of beans and some crackers she'd scavenged days ago. Michael ate slowly, his small hands shaking. She watched him, heart aching. How did it come to this? When the cold became unbearable, she wrapped Michael in all her clothes, rocking him gently. Outside, the wind howled through the empty streets, carrying with it the distant sounds of sirens and shouting, reminders that the world went on, even if it didn't stop for them. For Jordan, every day was a battle, a fight to protect her son, to keep him warm, safe, and hopeful in a place where hope was scarce. Days blurred into nights as Jordan struggled to keep Michael safe and fed. She spent mornings wandering the streets, searching for odd jobs, food banks, or any help she could find. But the city's indifferent eyes passed over her like she was invisible, a ghost clinging to the edges of society. At a local shelter, she tried to ask for assistance. The crowded room smelled of sweat and despair. Volunteers handed out food, but when Jordan mentioned she had her son, the sympathy vanished behind tired eyes. "We don't allow children here," a woman said firmly. "Too many problems." Jordan clenched her fists, biting back the panic rising inside her. Back on the streets, other homeless people eyed her with suspicion. Some were kind, sharing small smiles and bits of advice. Others warned her to stay away, to protect Michael from the dangers lurking even among them. One evening, Michael's cough grew worse. His little body shook as he tried to breathe. Jordan's heart raced. She had no health insurance, no money for a doctor. Desperately, she wrapped him in every scrap of clothing she had and whispered soothing words she barely believed herself. "Hold on, baby. Just hold on." She prayed no one would find them in that broken house that night. One chilly afternoon, as Jordan sat huddled with Michael inside the crumbling walls of their temporary home, a soft knock echoed through the broken door. Startled, Jordan tightened her grip on Michael and cautiously peered through a crack. Standing outside was a woman in a worn jacket, her eyes warm but tired. She held a small bag filled with sandwiches and a thermos. "Hi," the woman said gently. "My name's Tanya. I work with a local outreach program. I've seen you around." Jordan's heart pounded. Years of mistrust and fear made her hesitate, but something in Tanya's calm demeanor softened her. "I brought some food," Tanya continued. "And if you want, I can help you find a safer place for you and your son." Jordan shook her head slightly, tears welling up. "I don't want to be in those shelters. It's too dangerous with him." Tanya nodded, understanding. "I know. It's not easy. But maybe we can find another way. You don't have to do this alone." For the first time in weeks, Jordan felt a flicker of hope. She invited Tanya inside. They talked quietly about struggles and fears, and slowly, Jordan realized maybe accepting help wasn't weakness, it was survival. That night, as Michael slept wrapped in the thin blanket, Jordan thought about what Tanya had said. Maybe tomorrow could be different. As the rain tapped softly on the broken windows of the abandoned house, Jordan sat curled beside Michael, her thoughts drifting back to a time before the cold streets and shattered walls. She remembered the small apartment they once called home, just enough space for the two of them, filled with laughter and quiet moments. Michael's first steps, his soft giggles when she sang lullabies, the way his tiny hand fit perfectly into hers. But those days had slipped away, like sand through her fingers. The job loss, the eviction notices piling up, the arguments with her son's father who had long since walked away. The weight of bills, the cold silence from family she once counted on but who now turned their backs. Every setback had chipped away at her spirit, but never her love for Michael. Even now, as darkness settled around their fragile shelter, she held on to the memories, not to mourn what was lost, but to remind herself why she had to keep fighting. For him. For their future. One cold night, as Jordan and Michael settled into a rare moment of quiet, the fragile piece of their shelter shattered. Footsteps echoed outside, heavy, uneven, and too close. Jordan's breath hitched. She clutched Michael to her chest, her mind racing. The door creaked. Shadows appeared in the cracked doorway, two men, their eyes wild and voices rough. They were desperate, dangerous. "Hey, you. This spot's ours," one snarled. "Move it." Jordan stood, shielding Michael. "This is all we have. Please, just leave us alone." The men laughed, stepping forward. The tension tightened like a noose. Jordan's heart pounded louder than her fear. Summoning every ounce of courage, she pushed the men back with a fierce shout. "Stay away from my son." Surprised by her defiance, the men hesitated, then retreated into the night with curses trailing behind them. Shaking, Jordan held Michael close, tears streaming down her face, relief mixed with the raw exhaustion of a mother who would face any danger to protect her child. The cold floor pressed against Jordan's back as she sat cross-legged in the dim light of the broken window. Michael was asleep in her arms, his small chest rising and falling with soft, uneven breaths. The harshness of last night still clung to her skin, the pounding footsteps, the rough voices, the sudden burst of fear that had gripped her like ice. She kissed Michael's tangled curls gently, tracing the curve of his cheek with a trembling finger. Her mind raced. How long could they survive like this? How many nights like last night would they endure before something worse happened? The thought was unbearable. Jordan squeezed her eyes shut, swallowing the panic. She had promised Michael safety, not just tonight or tomorrow, but for the years to come. That promise felt heavier than any burden she had ever carried. The sun began to rise, slipping pale light into the room, revealing the scars of decay around them, peeling paint, shattered glass, and a floor scattered with dust and debris. This wasn't home. Not really. Just a fragile shelter clinging to memories and desperation. For years, Jordan had walked this tightrope, balancing fear, pride, and the fierce love she had for her son. She had avoided shelters, knowing the risks for a child in crowded spaces full of strangers. She had scavenged, begged, and fought for every meal, every ounce of warmth. But now, after last night's confrontation, she knew hiding wasn't enough. Michael deserved more. She glanced down at his peaceful face and made a decision that had been slowly forming in her heart for weeks. She would reach out for help. The decision terrified her. Help meant vulnerability. It meant trusting strangers. It meant facing the judgment of a world that often saw her as invisible or broken. It meant admitting she couldn't do it alone, something she had resisted with every fiber of her being. But the alternative, another night of fear, another day of cold, wasn't an option anymore. Jordan reached into her worn jacket pocket and pulled out a crumpled scrap of paper with a phone number scribbled in blue ink. Tanya's number. Tanya, the woman who had found them food, who had looked at her not with pity, but with kindness. A rare light in the darkness. Her hand shook as she dialed, the phone trembling against her ear. The ringing echoed in the quiet room. When Tanya answered, her voice was gentle but steady. "Hello? Jordan? It's Tanya." Jordan's breath caught in her throat. "Hi, it's me." There was a pause, a fragile moment suspended in time. I don't know where to start," Jordan whispered, her voice cracking. Tanya's reply was calm, patient. "Start anywhere. I'm here." Jordan swallowed the lump in her throat. She told Tanya about the nights in the abandoned houses, the dangers, the cold. She told her about Michael's cough, the fear she couldn't shake. Tanya listened. Then, softly, she said, "You're not alone anymore. Let's find a safer place for you and Michael, somewhere you both can rest without fear." Jordan hesitated, memories of broken promises and failed attempts flashing through her mind. But Tanya's voice felt like a lifeline. "Okay," Jordan finally said. "I'm ready to try." Over the next few days, Tanya helped Jordan navigate the maze of shelters, clinics, and social services. Each step was exhausting, filled with forms, waiting rooms, and moments of uncertainty. But Jordan held tightly to the hope growing inside her. Michael received a doctor's checkup. His fever was mild, but the doctor assured Jordan that with proper care, he'd be okay. For the first time in weeks, relief washed over her like a warm tide. They were placed in a transitional housing program, a small room with a door that locked, clean sheets, and meals they didn't have to beg for. It wasn't perfect, but it was safe. At night, as Michael slept peacefully beside her, Jordan allowed herself to breathe. She was still scared of what tomorrow might bring, scared of the road ahead. But she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer alone. And for Michael, that was everything. The days in transitional housing unfolded slowly but steadily. For Jordan and Michael, each small moment of normalcy was a victory carved out of the chaos that had been their life. The room they shared was modest. A faded curtain separated the sleeping area from a tiny kitchenette. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and fresh linen, a stark contrast to the damp, stale odor of the abandoned houses. For the first time in months, Jordan watched Michael play on a soft rug instead of the cold, dirty floor. She found a job at a local diner, washing dishes and cleaning tables. The work was exhausting, the hours long, but it gave her a small paycheck and, more importantly, a reason to get up every morning. Each day, she saved a little, enough to buy warm clothes for Michael and occasionally a treat, like a small toy or an ice cream cone, which made his eyes light up like the sun breaking through clouds. But life was still full of challenges. The program only guaranteed housing for a few months. Jordan knew the real test would come when they had to find a permanent home. There were moments of doubt, when exhaustion and fear crept back, whispering that it might all slip away again. Yet every smile from Michael, every word he learned, every step he took toward feeling safe, gave her strength to hold on. One evening, as she tucked Michael into bed, he looked up at her with sleepy eyes and said, "Mama, I'm happy." Her heart swelled with a fragile hope. Maybe, just maybe, their story was turning towards something brighter. Even as Jordan and Michael settled into their temporary home, the weight of uncertainty pressed down on them like a constant shadow. The months passed, and the expiration date on their shelter stay loomed closer, a reminder that stability was fragile. Jordan faced discrimination in subtle and harsh ways. At work, some customers avoided her or spoke to her son with thinly veiled suspicion. Other tenants eyed her cautiously, whispering about a young single mother struggling to keep it together. One evening, after a long shift, she overheard a conversation in the hallway. "She won't last," a woman said. "Too much baggage." The words stung, but Jordan refused to let them break her. Every insult, every sideways glance only strengthened her resolve to build a better life for Michael. Michael, meanwhile, blossomed with each passing day. His laughter returned, his curiosity grew, and he learned to trust the world around him slowly, carefully. But Jordan knew the scars of their past were still there, invisible but real. Late at night, when Michael finally drifted to sleep, Jordan sat by the window, holding her son's worn teddy bear, silently promising herself, no matter what, she would never let go. Their future was uncertain, but their bond was unbreakable. The first rays of sunlight spilled through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the small apartment Jordan now called home. It wasn't much, a modest two-bedroom unit in a quiet neighborhood, but to Jordan and Michael, it was everything they had dreamed of. Months of hard work, countless obstacles, and the support of people who refused to give up on them had finally led here. Jordan's job at the diner had steadily improved. Her manager had offered her more hours and even helped her apply for a scholarship program. Michael's laughter filled the rooms as he played with toys they had slowly collected, his eyes bright and full of life. For the first time in a long time, Jordan allowed herself to imagine a future free from fear and hunger. She stood by the window, watching the world outside come alive, the sound of children playing, neighbors greeting each other, the simple rhythms of everyday life. Her heart was heavy with the memories of dark nights, broken walls, and endless struggle. But it was also filled with hope, a fierce, glowing hope born from every sacrifice and every small victory. Jordan whispered to herself, "We made it, Michael. We're finally free." And as she held her son close, she knew the journey wasn't over. But together, they could face whatever came next.